Hello, I'm Susie Vance from Creating from the Heart, the Artistry of Living. And today I'm at the Skokie Heritage Museum with Sharon Hoogstraten. Sharon Hoogstraten is the daughter of a Dutch man and his wife, a Potawatomi native.
That's correct.
Welcome.
Thanks for being here.
Yes, I'm glad to have you. So, Sharon, this is really amazing work. It is beautiful, and it so celebrates the Potawatomi nation. It just makes...
Well, every one of these people are the contributors. I put it all together, but each one of them made the decision to participate, and I'm honored by everyone that's in the exhibition and in the book.
That's fabulous. So, have you always known that you had a Potawatomi mother?
Yeah.
How did you learn that?
My grandmother enrolled us all when we were toddlers, so I've been an enrolled member of the Citizen Potawatomi Nation since, I don't know, 1959 or something like that.
What does enrolling mean? What happens
in
when
order
you're
to
enrolled?
be recognized by the federal government or the Bureau of Indian Affairs, you have to actually be enrolled. And that's not always as easy as you would think it would be. We have a continuation in our heritage and ancestry, so it was easy for us. For the Citizen Potawatomi Nations and the Prairie Band, we were removed from this area where we're sitting today.
I know.
And the small advantage of that is that every time our people were removed, they were written down on these government rosters.
Oh, thank goodness.
So it was very easy for us to show our heritage. Conversely, people who didn't get removed, for instance, in rural parts of Michigan who managed to escape removal, they've had a very hard time proving their Potawatomi heritage. And that can be an impediment for enrollment. But it would have been foolhardy for them to, declare themselves as Potawatomis when everybody was being removed. They went behind the scenes.
Right.
And now they're trying to reestablish that. But Prairie Band and Citizen Band are fairly well documented for not happy reasons. So.
And how long have you been documenting the present day tribe?
Well, I really only started this project in 2010. I was invited by the Citizen Potawatomi Nation to show my artwork because they have a database about all the members and what their fields of discipline are, and I was listed as a photographer, so they asked if I wanted to show some artwork at our annual Family Reunion Festival, and I said, how about if we make some new artwork? And that's how it all began in 2010.
That's marvelous.
So I went down there, I packed everything from my studio and the sweeps that you see behind each person and set it all up in various locations over the last dozen years. And it became this work that extended to all the Potawatomi nations. The Potawatomi tribe, because of these removals and escapes and relocations, is actually 9 separate nations, and some are in Canada, the Upper Peninsula, the Lower Peninsula of Michigan, Kansas. The Citizen Potawatomis are in Shawnee, Oklahoma. Who am I missing?
I remember...
Wisconsin, the Forest County Potawatomis.
I remember from my youth, when I lived for 1 year, my father was an academician, and he had a sabbatical, and he chose to go to northern Michigan, where his family has for years had a small cottage. And so we spent the winter up there, and I was very surprised because I had been from Ohio before that, how many Native Americans there were there.
Yeah, Hannahville is actually one of the reservations. That's where our gathering was last year. and it's a beautiful part of the Upper Peninsula, all the way up the Keweenaw Peninsula.
Right.
There's also a lot of Ojibwe up that way, Potawatomi, Ottawa. They're all part of the Anishinaabe confederacy, I guess is the right word. Very closely related, languages very close, but three separate tribes.
Well, here we sit in the Skokie Museum, the Heritage Museum, and I can't help but say that sharing this with a community that probably didn't expect it to be here,
It's true.
as well as sharing it with our small community in Indiana, is such a treasure and very much appreciated.
It needs to be seen. If it's just hiding in, my studio, it's not going to do much work. So it's good to be here, and it's been fun. The folks that are here are very talented at finding maps and have steeped themselves in Skokie history. And it was spelled S-K-O-K-Y. It's an Indian word. And that's what, another thing I like to point out is that we're surrounded by Indian names.
Yes, we are.
So many of our states, our cities, our rivers, they're all based on the original native tribes, and Skokie is no exception. So I think that came as a surprise, and they had a map from 1832, and Skokie was listed there with that
spelling.
With that spelling. I was very excited to see it myself. So
Well, where we live in Beverly Shores is, I understand that it really was, it's not where the Potawatomi lived. They primarily had their residences or their villages in the Portage area, which made sense. But the area where our place is, our depot, is the hunting grounds for the most part.
Well, it was a somewhat nomadic tribe. I mean, they moved with the seasons, depending on whether they were finishing up agricultural crops or getting, venison for the winter. I mean, they moved around a fair amount.
So what do you think in terms of your doing your artwork? Is that part of celebrating what the Potawatomi tribe is today in the new millennium, so to speak, as you say?
Yeah, it is more and more. Two things, probably more directly to what you're saying. Maple sugaring, collecting wild rice, preserving the skills for canoe building. It's all being very purposefully restored to the new younger generation so that it can be carried forward. And a lot of, like the dancers, you see so many young kids, they've been dancing since they could walk. And it's important to people that they be motivated to learn these dances and learn about regalia. So that's why we have a lot of contest dancing too.
That's interesting.
Yeah, because there's real purses involved in that, and it's a fun and motivating way to keep people learning all those old traditions. And I've had other people talk to me about how their cultures struggle with that.
Yes.
How do they keep the young people interested? And the second thing I was going to mention is language. And we were losing our language, and the elders were disappearing. So probably for the last almost 30 years, there's been a real push to salvage the
And
language.
how are they doing that?
Well,
how are you doing that?
They're finding those, the really older generation that we are losing now. Some of them learned it as children from their elders, but they also had to overcome this idea that it was dangerous to speak the language because they'd had it, to be blunt, beat out of them.
Right.
And some of that older generation questioned whether they would be doing anyone a favor to save that language. It was something they'd been punished for. But
So what has been happening?
so since that time and winning them over and saying this is something that we'll have one chance to save, there have been several elders that stepped forward. And part of the gathering every year is prefaced by a language seminar.
Really?
And each nation comes together and they argue for days
About
how
to
you
say this
how
and
you
that.
say certain words, how they're spelled, which is the correct word. There are people who really object to any new words, like what would be a native word for computer. You've probably heard this with French language too. I mean, there's a lot of languages that struggle with that, and they say, well, there was no Potawatomi word for computer. There were no computers.
So what do you say?
Well, that's what they argue about. Some people are very purist about it, and some people say, well, we want this to be a working, evolving language, so we need to come up with some ideas. And then there's also, for instance, we talked about the UP. That's probably more influenced by Ojibwe language, which is, the double vowels and similar language, but not the same. And then if you come down to Chicago and Indiana area, they're influenced maybe by the Miami or the Ottawa, so it affects language. And yeah, they really go to the mat.
They do?
Every year. I myself have stepped away from it, but a really fun word that we use a lot is miigwech, and it's the miigwech.
Miigwech.
It's the word for thank you. And you'll see miigwech, you'll see it's spelled with two I's, you'll see it. It's all, no T, but everybody knows what miigwech means, so.
Well, miigwech to you, and thank you for sharing.
Oh, my pleasure.
This has been great.
Okay.
We look forward to seeing you at the depot.
Yeah, I have ancestors that came both from the Chicago area directly. Ouilmette is the suburb to the east of us, where we are right now, and I'm a descendant of Archange Ouilmette, hence the name of the town. That was her reserve from the Treaty of Prairie du Chien in 1829. But I'm also related to Potawatomis from that kind of Porter area in Indiana. So that ancestor is on the Treaty of Tippecanoe and had land in that area. So it's personal, and it's just a culture that's worth celebrating.
Well, we look forward to welcoming you to the depot.
I look forward to being there.
Thank you.
Miigwech.
Miigwech. Okay.